I'm J.R. Church. Welcome to today's analysis of the news. Got a couple of articles here from the Jerusalem Post. This one is written by Robin Shepherd of the Jerusalem Post, and she says it's been a terrible month for Israel's reputation in Great Britain. The government, she said, has announced a partial arms embargo in protest of Operation Cast Lead. That took place 6 months ago. Why are they just now getting around to it? I don't know. The charity War on Want, which is another organization, has held a launch event for a new book entitled Israeli Apartheid, A Beginner's Guide. The Guardian, a British publication, has featured commentaries promoting the apartheid analogy as well as accusing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of using Nazi language to defend settlement policy. The BBC and other media outlets have given massive coverage to the recent Breaking the Silence report, slamming the Israeli Defense Forces for committing war crimes. Barely a day goes by without a new front being opened against the Jewish state. And Robin Shepherd writes, those of us who follow such matters are always in danger of getting too close to our subject, but given that the IDF is not involved in combat operations, I, for one, have never seen a period like it. She said on Friday, The Guardian ran 2 anti-Israel opinion pieces on one and the same day. She says there's something in the air. The Israel haters smell blood. She says they're going in for the kill. It could be that we're on the threshold of a new era. But why now, she writes. The simplest explanation is that the relentless, unremitting stream of anti-Israel invective has been pumped into the public mind in Britain over the last decade or so, was always going to reach critical mass at some point. Might as well be now, she says. There's nothing particularly significant about the timing. The clock has been ticking for years. Israel's time has simply come. Ultimately, the simple explanation may be the best explanation. But there are a number of other factors now at play which may have helped to bring the situation to a head. She says, first of all, the election of Barack Obama is perceived by many British opinion formers as heralding a refreshing new approach to Israel from the United States. For linguistic and historical reasons, political change in America is keenly felt in Britain. Obama's comments calling for a freeze on the settlements have provided the pretext for a new assault on Israel in general, using the American president's huge popularity as cover. Secondly, the election of Benjamin Netanyahu, combined with the appointment of Avigdor Lieberman as foreign minister, have offered new opportunities to make the attack personal. Even for Israel's most virulent detractors, it was not easy to mount a hate campaign against Ehud Olmert and Tzipi Livni. Netanyahu has been demonized in Britain for years. Lieberman is portrayed as little better than a skinhead. The wolves have been thrown fresh meat, she writes. Third, Foreign Secretary David Miliband, that's British Foreign Secretary, has recently recast the tone of British pronouncements on the Middle East and relations with the Islamic world in a way that serves the broader agenda of Israel's opponents. For example, she writes, in a speech in Oxford in May and reported in The Guardian, he spoke of abjuring distinctions between moderates and extremists, a line that, despite Foreign Office denials, was widely interpreted as potentially paving the way for talks with Hamas and other militant groups. He also referred to ruined Crusader castles, lines drawn on maps by colonial powers, and to the failure, quote, to establish 2 states in Palestine, end of quote. Well, Miliband cannot be held entirely responsible for the way his words are interpreted, but it is precisely in such guilty post-colonial terms that Israel's opponents in Britain have always talked. To hear their own kind of language echoing back at them from a leading figure in the UK foreign policy establishment is likely to embolden them further. Then fourth, in a country whose opinion formers still fulminate about the invasion of Iraq, sometimes portrayed as a venture inspired by Israel and Zionist neoconservatives in America, the Netanyahu government's hardline stance on Iran has got the alarm bells ringing again. Quote, "Are we going to get sucked into another war in the Middle East for the benefit of Israel?" they ask. Fifth, Netanyahu's new emphasis on insisting that the Palestinians recognize Israel specifically as a Jewish state is pushing Israel's opponents against the wall and forcing them to declare themselves with greater clarity. Of course, this does not apply to Britain, but as a country whose opinion-forming classes rank among the most hostile to Israel in the Western world, the move has provoked a particularly hysterical reaction. Since the Palestinians have made it clear that they have no intention of recognizing Israel as a Jewish state, British opponents of Israel have been forced to choose between accepting that Palestinian rejectionism forms the real root cause of the conflict or themselves rejecting the Jewish character of Israel and the whole Zionist enterprise to boot. Put all of these factors together, she says, and it becomes easier to understand why a situation which was awful to begin with has deteriorated so rapidly. The obvious question now is, where next? With a partial arms embargo in mind, we should obviously be watching for an extension of formal sanctions. Outside the government sphere, it is a racing certainty that unions will renew efforts for trade and academic boycotts. Media hysteria will grow as each new assault on Israel's integrity helps legitimize and validate the next. For the Jews of Britain, the prospect of increasing anti-Semitism against this backdrop is all too real. And she concludes, the darkness is closing in. Wow.